The young man stood in my doorway on a cold December night and told me he wanted to spend Christmas in Barbados with his family. He had no money. He had no ticket. He told me every reason it was impossible, and he told it well, because he was clever, and clever men are always the best lawyers for their own limitation. I looked at him, this thin, discouraged young man who would one day be known to the world as Neville Goddard, and I refused to let him finish. I said, "You do not want to go to Barbados. You are in Barbados." He thought I had misunderstood him. I understood him better than he understood himself. I am telling you about that night because in the next few days, something is going to arrive in your life that says, "Not for you, not yet, not possible." A number on a screen, a message that doesn't come, a door that closes softly, the way doors close when they intend to stay closed. And the entire purpose of the time we spend together tonight is that when it comes, and it is already on its way to you, you will do what Neville learned to do, standing in my doorway. You will feel nothing, not because you are strong, because you will finally know who you are. Sit with me a moment before I teach you anything. I want to describe you, not the technique. I want to describe the person watching this. You have been doing the technique correctly. I want you to hear that first, because you have quietly begun to suspect the opposite. You imagine the scene, you feel it, for a moment, genuinely, and then you open your eyes, and you check. You look at the bank balance. You look at the phone, waiting for it to light up. You watch the face of the person to see if something in them has shifted toward you. You have been going to Barbados every night and coming home every morning. You keep going to Barbados. You never once arrive. I want to say something to you now, and I want you to actually receive it, not just hear it. You are not lazy. You are not undisciplined. You are trying harder than anyone around you knows, and that is precisely the tell. Trying is the confession that you do not yet believe it is done. A man does not try to remember his own name, he simply speaks it. The moment effort enters, desire has already leaked out the back door of belief. Neville wrote something down years after he left my company, in a small book called The Power of Awareness, and I want to give it to you exactly as he gave it to the world, because I have never heard it said better, not even by me. He wrote, "Man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness." Read that again in your own mind, not causes outside like circumstance, luck, other people, timing, money. One cause, your state. That is the whole of the law, and everything else I tell you tonight is only that sentence, turned over slowly so you can see every one of its faces. You have been trying to change the reflection while standing in front of the same mirror. That is why the technique feels like effort. You cannot reach through the glass and rearrange the image. You can only change the one standing in front of it. Tonight, we change the one standing in front of it. Let me take you back to that doorway, because I did not simply say a clever sentence to Neville and send him off inspired. I want you to see exactly what happened, because the story is precise, and precision is what will save you. It was the early years in New York, and Neville was far from his family, far from the island where he was born, and it was coming up on Christmas, and something in him ached the particular ache of a man who has been away too long. He wanted to sail to Barbados. He had no means to do it. None, and he came to me the way men come to teachers, half hoping I would give him a plan, some clever arrangement of ships and money and timing that would make the impossible merely difficult. I would not discuss the ocean with him. He wanted to talk about how. I would not talk about how. He tried 3 or 4 times to describe the practical shape of the problem, and each time I turned the conversation back to one place. I said to him, "If you were in Barbados now, you would not be trying to go. You would be there. So tell me, if you were there tonight, what would you see when you woke? Not what would you do to get there. What would you see once you had already arrived?" He described it to me, slowly, at first reluctantly, and then with more feeling than he expected from himself. The light a particular color in the morning there, the sound of his family's voices in the house, the smell of it. And I said to him, "Then sleep there tonight, not toward it, in it." He wanted to argue about the ship. I would not argue about the ship. A man who is already standing on solid ground does not need to discuss how he might one day arrive at it. I did not withhold an answer from him about the crossing. There was no answer to withhold. The ship was never the cause. The state was the cause, and the moment the state changed, the ship would find him, not the other way around. He stopped rehearsing the trip. He began sleeping in the arrival, not the boarding, not the waiting on the dock, the arrival. The feeling of already being there, of family around him, of the warmth of it, entered into as a man enters into a memory, not a hope. And in the days that followed, an unexpected way opened for him to make the crossing, in a manner he had not devised and could not have devised, because the devising was never his job. His job was the state. The bridge was the world's. I tell you this, and I want you to hear underneath the story, not just the story. You have been sleeping every night as one who wants. That is why you keep waking as one who lacks. The state you fall asleep in is the state the night works on, and if the last feeling of your day is longing, the subconscious takes longing as its instruction and hands you tomorrow, longing, dressed up in new clothes. Tonight, actually tonight, not someday, you sleep as one who has. Before I go further into how this works, I want to give you something, because I can see exactly where you are, and I am not going to make you wait until the end of a long lecture to receive it. Here is the relief I promised you. The reason your results have been inconsistent has nothing to do with your worth or your discipline. It is that you have been doing one movement of what is actually a 4-part motion, and doing one movement well will always produce partial, flickering results that feel like almost, and almost is the cruelest place to live. A full night, done properly, has 4 parts. You revise the day that just happened, so it does not follow you into sleep like a smell on your clothes. You correct the quiet inner conversation you are having with yourself, the one running under your thoughts. You build one precise scene, not a vague wish but a specific moment, implying the thing is done. And then, only then, you fall asleep inside that scene, not beside it, inside it. Most people, sincerely, faithfully, do the 3rd part alone, and then wonder why the ocean will not part for them. It was never you failing. The routine was simply incomplete. The way a key that is cut only halfway will still slide into the lock and still refuse to turn. So I wrote something short, and it cost you nothing, called Rewrite Tonight. It walks you through a complete 3-minute pre-sleep revision. How to choose the 3 moments from your day that are quietly stealing your sleep. How to revise each one until it is clean, and how to feel that clearing happen, so that everything else you do afterward, including everything I am about to teach you, has clear ground to land on instead of the noise of an unrevised day. It is the first link in the description below this video. Open it tonight, before you sleep, not next week. Or, if you would rather, comment the single word, reset, just those 5 letters, and I will make certain you are pointed to it. Say it not as a comment, say it as a small declaration that you are finished being a man or woman, things simply happen to. There is also a longer version of this, for anyone who wants the whole nightly motion laid out night by night, 7 nights, all 4 parts in their proper order, called the transfer protocol, and it lives through that same link for $27 whenever you are ready for it. But hear me clearly, you do not need it tonight. Tonight, the free guide is enough. Begin there now. Come back with me to the center of it, because I want you to understand something Neville did not understand. The first year he knew me, and it took him longer than I wished it had to receive it fully. He thought imagination was a way to get things, a tool, a lever you pull to move an object at a distance. It is not that. Imagination is not a tool you use. Imagination is the thing you are. Neville later found the words for this in Blake, and he repeated them for the rest of his life, because they never wore out. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. Read that plainly. Not, imagination is a power you have. Imagination is who you are, and it is the only creative power operating anywhere. Barbados was never a destination. It was a state of consciousness, the state of a man who is already there. And when the state changes, the world does not resist it, because the world was never independent of it. The world is not a thing you influence from outside, the way you might push a stone. The world is a thing you outpicture, the way a projector throws an image onto a screen. You do not negotiate with the screen. You change the film. Here is why wanting quietly defeats itself every single time, without exception, and I need you to actually understand the mechanism, not just agree with the sentence. To want something is to assume, silently and completely, that you do not currently have it. That assumption is not neutral. It is creative. It is doing exactly what assumption always does. It is objectifying itself. So the very posture of wanting, held long enough, manufactures more of the condition of lacking. You are not being punished. You are being obeyed. The law was working the entire time. It was simply working on the instruction you actually gave it, not the instruction you meant to give it. You are always assuming something. There is no neutral gear. The only question that has ever mattered is what. Neville wrote it plainly in a small book called Feeling is the Secret, and I want to give it to you exactly. The feeling of the wish fulfilled, if persisted in, must objectify itself. Notice the word he chose, persisted in, not visited, not glanced at for 4 minutes before falling asleep out of habit. Persisted in, meaning slept in, carried, returned to, inhabited the way you inhabit your own home, without announcement, without effort, because it is simply where you live now. This is why I would not argue with Neville about the ocean that night in my doorway. The ocean was never the cause. The ship was never the cause. You are the power. There is no other. I want you to hear that sentence the way I mean it, not as a slogan, as an actual description of how reality is built. There is nothing else operating. Not luck, not other people's opinions of you, not the economy, not your family history, not your age, not the year you were born in. One power, your own state of consciousness, assuming. Now let me walk you through something, because I have watched this pattern in 1,000 doorways, not only Neville's, and I want you to recognize it the moment I name it. The way you recognize your own face in a photograph you did not know was being taken. Checking is how you tell the universe you don't believe it. You thought monitoring for results was diligence. It felt responsible. It felt like tending something. It is in fact disbelief wearing the costume of care. Here is the law, precisely. A state persisted in objectifies itself. persisted in. Every time you check, you exit the state you assumed and re-enter the state of lack you were trying to leave. And the moment you re-enter lack, however briefly, you hand the subconscious a new instruction, and it obeys the newest voice, not the oldest one. Checking does not confirm your work. Checking erases it and starts the clock again. In those Barbados days, Neville wanted, more than anything, to know how it would happen. He wanted a glimpse of the mechanism, the way a man peers under the hood of a car he does not trust. And I would not give him one glimpse, not because I was withholding an answer from him. I was withholding his own doubt from him. I would not let him rehearse the version of events where it might not work, because rehearsing that version, even for a moment, even out of curiosity, is still assuming, and assumption is never idle. It is always building something. You do not water a seed by digging it up every evening to check the roots. You water it, and you leave the ground alone, and you go about your evening as a person who already knows, in some quiet place past argument, that green will come. Stop asking, is it working yet? Working is not a future event you are waiting to arrive at. It is a present condition you are already occupying the moment you stop breaking it open to inspect it. There is something else beneath this I want to bring into the light, because you have not said it to anyone, possibly not even fully to yourself, and I want you to feel what it is like to be truly seen before I explain it. Your fear is not a warning. It is a wish, still being assumed, only pointed backward. You believe the dread you feel is protective. It feels responsible, like the checking did, as though by imagining the worst, you are somehow guarding against it, keeping one eye open for danger, the way a soldier keeps watch. It is not protection. Fear is imagination, in full force, aimed at an outcome you do not want. Neville said it in 4 words that never left me once I heard them from his own mouth in later years, because they are simply true. Fear is faith in reverse gear. Same engine, same power, same fidelity to the law. Only the direction has been reversed. And here is the part I do not think anyone has said to you plainly. I do not believe your deepest fear is that the good will fail to come. I think you have made a kind of peace with disappointment. It is familiar, almost comfortable, the way an old ache becomes almost companionable over enough years. Your real fear, the one underneath the one you speak of, is that the good will come and then be taken, that somewhere in you there lives a quiet conviction that you are the kind of person good things happen to, briefly, and then leave, not a person denied, a person visited and then abandoned. You are not afraid you will fail to reach Barbados. You are afraid that if you reach it, you will be sent home. I want you to let that land without flinching from it, because naming a fear precisely is the beginning of its undoing. A vague fear can rule you for years. A named fear has already lost half its power, because you have taken it out of the dark and stood it in the light where you can see its actual size, which is always smaller than the shadow it was casting. Here is what you do with it. Tonight, when it rises, and it will rise, possibly tonight while you are trying to fall asleep in the very state I am teaching you to fall asleep in. Do not fight it. Fighting a feeling gives it a chair at the table and a permanent seat. Revise it instead. Meet the feared scene exactly as it arrives, the good taken back, the door closing again, and rewrite it, in the same detail, with the same intensity, but pointed the other direction. Not the good arriving and leaving, the good arriving and staying, becoming ordinary, becoming simply your life, the way breath is ordinary, the way your own name is ordinary. Same faculty, same force, opposite destination. I want to move you now to something I consider the actual center of everything I ever gave Neville. More central even than the doorway, more central than Barbados. And I want to say it slowly, because I need it to land as identity, not as a technique you file away with the others. You were never taught to get things. You were taught to be someone. The world remembers me, when it remembers me at all, as the man who taught a technique. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and there it is, a formula, tidy and repeatable. That is not what I gave him. A technique is a thing you apply from outside yourself, the way you apply a tool to a stubborn lock. I did not give Neville a tool. I refused, again and again, over the months and years he knew me, to agree with him about his own condition. He would describe his lack to me, in detail, with the precision of an honest and intelligent man reporting facts, and I would not receive it as fact. Not because I was blind to what he was describing, because to agree with a man's lack is to sentence him to it a second time, once by circumstance and once by consent. I loved him too much to believe his poverty. There is no technique that survives underneath a man who still, in the quiet, unwatched hour, believes something outside himself holds the power over his life. He can perform every step correctly, build the scene, feel the feeling, fall asleep inside it, and still fail, because the moment he wakes, some older, more practiced part of him returns to believing in bank balances and weather and other people's moods as the true governors of his life. Man's chief delusion, remember, is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness. Not some causes, not causes in certain areas of life and not others. Any cause, anywhere else, is the delusion. Stop asking imagination to fix your life the way you might ask a mechanic to fix a car, as an outside service performed on an object called you. Start assuming the self for whom the fix was never needed, because the fix already happened. There is a difference, and it is the entire difference between praying for money and being a person for whom money is simply not a subject of anxious thought, the way breathing is not a subject of anxious thought. Techniques get you things, occasionally, unreliably, the way a lottery occasionally pays out. Identity keeps them, quietly, the way a river keeps its bed, without struggle, without daily negotiation. Let me give this to you now as a practice, because I have never wanted you to leave one of these evenings with only a feeling and no instrument to carry it in. Tonight, before you sleep, do not build a fantasy of getting your desire. Do not imagine the moment of receiving, the phone ringing with the news, the check arriving in the mail, the door opening for the first time. Choose instead the single scene that could only exist if the thing were already completely done. Not the boarding of the ship, the being there, not the interview going well, the conversation, days later, already comfortable in the new position, already ordinary in it. Not the reconciliation happening, the relationship, weeks on, simply being warm again, unremarkable in its warmth, the way old friendships are unremarkable. Then enter the state Neville later called SATS, the state akin to sleep, that drowsy threshold where the body has gone still and the senses have gathered inward, and the analytical mind, the part of you that argues and doubts and checks, has finally gone quiet because it is too tired to keep arguing. Body still, breath slow, that particular heaviness behind the eyes that tells you sleep is near but has not yet arrived, that is the doorway. That is where the assumption is received, not merely thought. Live the scene from inside it, not as a spectator watching yourself from a little distance, the way you might watch a film, but from within your own eyes, feeling what your own hands would feel, hearing what your own ears would hear. Feel it the way you feel a memory, not the way you feel a wish. Neville said it plainly, and I ask you to hold these words as you fall asleep tonight. You must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not think about the feeling. Assume it. Wear it the way you wear your own skin, without effort, without announcement. And then, this is the part almost everyone abandons in the last 60 seconds before sleep. The part where the entire night's work is either sealed or spilled. Do not check whether it is working. Let the last thing your consciousness holds, as sleep finally takes you, be the fulfilled state itself, undisturbed. A man who checks his own pulse every few seconds to make sure his heart is beating will exhaust himself long before his heart ever gives him reason to worry. Let it beat. Fall asleep inside the state, and let the night do what the night has always done with whatever it is given. This is the fourth movement of the four I described to you earlier, the sleeping in. Rewrite tonight gives you the first three that make this one actually hold. The clearing of the day so it does not follow you into the scene uninvited, and the quieting of the inner voice that keeps whispering want beneath everything else you do. It is the first link in the description, or comment reset and I will find you. But hear this clearly. Even if tonight you do only this one thing I have just given you, do it completely. Do it as one who has already arrived, and it will not return to you void. I want to say one more thing to you now, because I do not want you to be ambushed by your own fear later tonight, alone, without me there to name it for you the way I am naming it now. That fear is not a sign you are doing something wrong. I need you to actually hear that, not simply nod at it. The fear that rises the moment you dare to assume the good, that particular tightening, that old familiar panic that arrives right when you begin to feel the new state settle in, is not evidence against you. It is the old self, the one built entirely out of lack, fighting for its own survival, because it can feel, somewhere beneath your conscious notice, that you are about to stop feeding it. Neville trembled in my doorway that night. I saw it plainly. A grown man, intelligent, capable, trembling at the size of what I was asking him to believe. He very nearly let that trembling talk him out of Barbados entirely, out of even trying the state, because trembling feels like a warning, and warnings feel wise to obey. The trembling was not a sign that Barbados was far from him. It was a sign that Barbados was close, closer than he had let himself believe in years. So when the dread rises in you tonight, or tomorrow, or 3 nights from now when you least expect it, do not run from it, and do not fight it either, because fighting only proves to it that it has your attention, and it feeds on attention the way flame feeds on air. Bless it instead. Let it pass through you the way weather passes through a valley, without your valley becoming the storm. That fear is the death rattle of the person who could not have what you are at this very moment, on the verge of receiving. It is not stopping you. It is announcing that the old arrangement is ending. Now I want to speak to you about the waiting, because I know some of you have already assumed, have already begun sleeping in the state, and the world outside your window has not yet rearranged itself to agree with you, and a very old, very reasonable-sounding voice has begun to whisper that perhaps it did not work after all. The silence you are standing in right now is not refusal. I want you to consider it instead exactly what it actually is. The ocean, rearranging itself so that the ship can reach you. A world does not turn to match a new man or a new woman instantly, and it certainly does not turn quietly. It turns with delay, sometimes considerable delay, and I need you to understand that the delay is not the problem you have been treating it as. The delay is the proof. Nothing worth calling a change ever moved through the world without some interval between the inner decision and the outer evidence. because the outer world is enormous and slow and made of countless other people's assumptions all pressing against each other, and yours has to move through all of that the way light moves through water, bending, taking its time, but arriving. Remember the young man in my doorway. He waited too. He did not sleep in Barbados on the Tuesday and sail on the Wednesday. There was a gap, and in that gap, I have no doubt, some part of him wondered whether he had been foolish to believe an old teacher who would not even discuss the ship with him. But the gap closed, in its own time, in a manner he had not designed, because designing it was never his task, and one day, a day that is, I promise you, already decided, already as fixed and certain as anything that has ever happened to you, you will find yourself standing in the middle of something that once would have undone you completely, the bill, the message that does not come. The door I told you at the very beginning of this hour was already on its way to closing, and instead of the old collapse, you will feel only stillness, a quiet you did not manufacture and do not need to explain to anyone. And in that stillness, I believe, some part of you will hear what I am telling you now, arriving late, exactly on time. You do not go to the state. You are the state. You are the power, and there is no other. And you will remember that I told you this, on an ordinary night, before any of it had happened yet. Everything I have given you tonight is real, and it works precisely as I have described it. And none of it requires you to be someone other than who you already are. But there is one thing running underneath all of it, all day, every day, that most teachers get entirely backward, and I do not want to leave you without at least pointing toward it, because it is the hinge everything else swings on. They tell you to control your thoughts. It was never the thoughts. It is the quiet, almost unnoticed conversation you carry on with yourself in the space between your thoughts, the inner speech, running underneath everything you do, that is writing your tomorrow, while you believe you are simply going about your day. In the next hour we spend together, I will show you the sentence you have been repeating to yourself without ever once catching yourself in the act of saying it, and I will show you how to change it in a single night. That is the hidden hinge on which everything I gave you tonight actually turns, and once you have it, you will understand why some nights the state holds effortlessly, and why other nights it seems to slip through your hands no matter how carefully you built it. Until then, sleep tonight as one who has already arrived, not as one who is trying, not as one who hopes, as one who has already crossed the water and is only now, finally, letting the world catch up to what is already true.